And I know our attorney is coming. It is 6:30, so I am going to open this September 25th Board of Trustees meeting. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In your packets, you have correspondence. One was a letter received from Catherine Bussey of Pioneer Patio in support of the improvements to Pioneer Alley. That is a project that was submitted to New York Forward. So that letter was also submitted to New York Forward to go along with our Pioneer Alley improvements. We also have an email received from Aliona Yezhova of 122 Chestnut Street regarding her car being towed while parked on Grove Street during paving. And I think you can see the sequence of emails, and she submitted her towing charge. I did respond to this on the behalf of our DPW and our police department, and my email response is in there. There was quite a bit of a notification. We paved over 7 streets, and we put that out there on social media on September 7th, listing all the streets, including Grove Street, Maple Street to Chestnut Street. Mitch had the signs up 2 days before we began milling, and then it was almost 4 days before we paved. So I put it here, though, in case anyone has a different opinion or would like to discuss it. No? Okay. Moving on, we have public hearings, which we will open at 7 or probably thereafter. Review of minutes, I submitted a couple of corrections. I didn't know if you sent any, Cindy.
I do have some very minor typos, but I did not get a chance today to send to.
You can do it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So motion to approve the minutes of the August 28th meeting with corrections submitted by Joe, second by George. All in favor? And then we have 4 permits tonight. The first one is an application to use village property, and this was for a self-catered dinner commemorating the 50-year anniversary of college graduation. And I was going to say, Marcia was getting...
Yeah, he called back actually just when I got back in the office, and he said he does not want to use the
bill.
Looking at the firehouse instead.
At the fire hall.
So we can withdraw this.
So is he submitting one for the fire hall?
Yes, I believe. He's still contacting them and working it out, but yes, we do have the application, but he didn't fill it out yet.
And paid his $25 fee?
I don't think he's paid anything yet because he's still working out details.
It's just that his request is for October 13th, and I was thinking we wouldn't be meeting again.
We don't always approve the firehouse ones through the board. I mean, we've done, they come in periodically and we just approve them.
All right, that's great. So we'll put that one down. We have an application to use village property, Ferry Spring Park, on October 8th, 2023 for Otasaga fireworks at 9 p.m. It's slightly different company that we normally have, so it looked different. I did confirm they have paid the $100 non-resident Ferry Spring use fee and the $350 cleanup damage deposit. Marcia said all the materials came in. Is there a motion to approve the, October 8th fireworks display?
I'll make that motion.
By Joe, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
Jenna, could you let the fire department know that that is happening?
And then we have 2 more in our additional agenda items you were handed tonight. There is a permit application for Alzheimer's Association Walk to End Alzheimer's, using village streets. Date is October 28th, 7, does it say a.m. to 12 p.m.? Yes. And the map is in there. They're pretty much using our sidewalks, I assume, right? Yeah, not that. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the portion of the walk that's within the village pending submission of a certificate of insurance.
Which is in draft, they have to get it from the Alzheimer's Association, so they're getting it.
All right, so there's the motion, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
And one more permit application from Doug McCoy, Clark Sports Center for the Coop Loop 5K, 10K, utilizing village streets on October 29th, 1 to 2:30. There's a map in here. And again, there's a portion not wholly within the village. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the portion within the village.
by Cindy, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, those are our permit applications. We're now at the zoning officials report. You received Chris DeVille's report in your packet, as well as copies of the ZBA meeting and the H-Park meeting. And the planning board had no business really before it. It met solely to render an opinion on our proposed zoning law update. So we may refer back to that. I would like approval of my appointment of Jay Bosley as a first alternate for H-Park.
I'll make that motion.
By George, seconded by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Thank you.
Oh, is he back there? I didn't even
Yeah.
So glad you stepped up. Thank you. Now we are on to our special permit applications. And we're going to take them in the order that is on your agenda, beginning with 1 Beaver Street. And in your, again, your additional agenda items, you have the part 1 of the short environmental assessment form for 1 Beaver Street. Is in your packet. So I should point out that 1 Beaver Street is currently operating under a special permit, and you can see the renovations that will occur to Harrison House in order to accommodate a daycare. Are you filled in the blanks, Cindy, on what?
I am. So there's a few things that we need to do. The first thing that we need to do is declare the Board of Trustees intent to act as lead agency for the purposes of seeker. So I will make that motion.
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Second thing we need to do is to classify this action as a type 2 action under seeker 617.5, letter C, number 9, which is for non-residential facilities under 4,000 square feet of expansion, which describes this project, and it means that for the purposes of seeker, assuming that both the planning board and H-Park agree with our determination to act as lead agency, we've completed the process. So I will make a motion for a type 2 classification.
Motion by Cindy, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
And then we need to send it.
Yes, so this will involve an amendment to the special permit that currently exists. for the expansion of Harrison House for use as an accessory use to a medical facility, namely an employee daycare, for the addition of 5 parking spaces, and for the development of an on-site playground for children in that daycare. So in order to consider that special permit, we need recommendations from the planning board and from HPARB. So I will make a motion to forward this application to those 2 boards.
Motion made by Cindy, second by Sydney. All in favor?
Aye.
And then lastly, we need to forward this to the Otsego County Planning Department under 239 because it is in 500 feet of the boundary between the village of Cooperstown and the town of Middlefield.
Motion made, second by George. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I believe we are done for this evening unless we want to set a public hearing, but that may be premature considering all of those other things that need to happen.
Yeah, in October, I'm just thinking of, yeah, we're gonna have to set at least one public hearing before October 3rd one. Are you thinking, I don't want to wait too long to November when be my only thought.
All right, well, I will make a motion to set a public hearing for the regular meeting in October for an amendment to the special permit for 1 Beaver Street for expansion of Harrison House for use as an accessory use to a medical facility, for the addition of 5 parking spaces, and for the development of an on-site playground.
Second by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That brings us to Averill Road project. And you have in your packet their application that includes responses to the special use criteria, as well as part 1 of the environmental assessment form, and some supporting materials. And at this time, would Bassett like to do a presentation on this?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Matt Hamlin, you may remember me from last year. And the reason why we're back is because of the technicality under the seeker classification. And that was over 7 months ago. We have our design team and representatives from Bassett here this evening. We prepared a PowerPoint presentation, we have drawings, we have handouts for you. So first, I'd like to introduce Kendra Beers-Vaccaro, Vice President of Facilities for Bassett Healthcare Network, Robert Celesti, I'm not sure if you covered Bob, DHN, and then going down the list, we've got Joe Carano. Yeah. I got that right? Yeah. In architects, I practice that. His firm is the lead architectural firm on this project. And then to our right, I've got Scott Freeman of Kevin Pierre Freeman in Syracuse, landscape architect. Rudy Zona from RZ Engineering, civil engineer, an expert in stormwater management. Josh Edmonds from civil integrity, the local contractor who the owner intends to retain if the project's approved. And then we've got Greg Patrick out of Sage Engineering outside of Albany, as the electrical engineer. So as I indicated a few minutes ago, so we're back here after 7 months, and when we had to withdraw the permit because of the misclassification, the owner made a decision. We could have reapplied right then and there and reclassified with the proper classification we take in. But the owner decided that this board had some legitimate concerns that we didn't have information for to give you, so you could take a hard look and make an informed decision on the seeker. So the owner decided to hold off, reapplying right away, and went out and had our experts, our design team, get answers for the board. So when it comes to the time to make a decision, and with your seeker, you can take a hard, but informed look at it. And the results of those the data, and what we found out about the site, we think is very positive and will answer questions regarding such things as parking, traffic, stormwater management, and groundwater, and also electrical usage for the site. So, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who is the landscape architect who worked on the project.
Just before Scott, I just wanted to know if we do have 11 by 17 copies, that if you want to look at them while we go through this. Yeah. Advance.
You probably should leave one with that packet too.
Yeah, I'll go.
Yeah, it'll go in her mailbox.
Yeah.
Okay, so as Matt mentioned, it's been 7 months since we made our last appearance, so the design essentially in the same area. Engineering and programming, going through the seeker and really making the project fit the site. Still 50 acres plus or minus. We're still disturbing about 12, 13 acres. We're still figuring out the last bunch of limits as we refine our design. You guys are all familiar with this site, so I'll just move on to the next one. Here's our site. Whoops, that's power. Here's our site. Basically, the way I like to summarize this project from 10,000 feet is you have our project, the workforce housing project, which is the lower campus, and then we have the water tower, which is a benefit to the community as well as the needs of our project. So that's something we mentioned. So the next slide again, we'll zoom in a little closer. Overall, just go over the components of the project. There's been a lot of discussion about, we'll just start with community use. So at the end of this road, we added 5 parking spaces, so people won't be parking in the right of way. They have a place to pull off, and they'll still have access through the site to the walking trails. Next thing I'd like to point out is there's our apartments, there's our townhomes. These 7 months ago, these were 2D. These are now 3D. We spent a lot of time with the team and our engineer. We have stormwater. We have the grades worked out. The detention basin is this size. I'll let Rudy get into that in a couple of minutes. There's a large divergent swell here that pulls all the water in the basin. 7 months ago, that was just a blue shape. This blue shape has actually been sized. About half of the area there is blue. That'll have water in it all year round. Safety is important. We have a perimeter fence around the entire basin. That's something mentioning there. I guess differences from last year, we started with a road and a turnaround, and after talking to the fire department and looking at safety needs, we thought it made a lot of sense to have one loop road that goes all the way around. So if you ever had an emergency at one end, you have egress on the other end. So that's all worked out. Again, we have the water tower road. This will all be in an easement. It'll be worked out with the municipality. So the water will go up to the water tank again. I'll let Rudy speak to that. Go on to this. I'll just zoom in on this one. Here's where we spent a lot of time the past year refining the project. So the townhome groupings, they each have a nice little courtyard area. They each have their own little seating area. The apartments, they have a nice gathering area here. We have for the younger kids, we have all ages actually, we have a shelter and a little playground area here at this end. With fencing, of course, around the basin. We have a waste recycling area for waste and recyclables in several locations, one up here, another one down there. Visibility, it's important what we see going out, what people see coming in. One of the things we've done is we put a lower visibility screen here. And the reason I say lower level is because we're working with putting our power. We got to work on a power right away that comes through here to get power up to the water tower. So we're in the process, and I don't want to take everybody's thunder away, but Greg will get into that nicely. That was one of the 3 things to address, so Greg's going to have to take there. So we have some low screening here, and then we put a second buffer of evergreens along the entire basin, being sensitive to the neighbors here, so when they look across, they'll see vegetation. Bob will tell you with our removals, the trees that were primarily removed in this area were all in very poor shape. So they came down and it's been pretty much cleared almost to these limits. We have a little more to go on that. Another slide here.
Before you leave that, may I ask a question?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
How do you want to handle questions? Do you want to go through it all at once?
Why don't we go through the presentation and circle?
Yeah, that's
all
all
right.
right. Yeah, because so the reason we put this is a plan we put together recently. This is easements and utilities. This is how it works. So water in blue, up and down, that's municipal, that's public. And once it gets onto our site, then it's private. So light blue lines you can barely see, that's private. And what else happens with water? Fire protection. We have one sprinkler, one fire hydrant at this end, which has a little municipal easement that's public. And over here we have a second one. So we have 2 fire hydrants to provide fire protection there. In this yellow color, that's power going up the hill. We had two options. We could do above grade standing poles or underground. We're going to go underground with an eye towards aesthetics, less visual concerns there. The sanitary is tough to see. It's in a lighter green, but we're going to have gravity from this building, from this group of buildings, from this group of buildings. It all goes down. That's all private. And when we get to the corner of our property, there's a couple hundred feet. We're going to need a sewer line extension. So we're currently working with the land surveyor to find out how much and where it would go, but it's basically going to go on one side of the road or the other. And with that being said, we're putting the water on one side of the street, the sanitary on the other, and with that there'll be pavement repair. So in front of our project, there was a concern in our traffic report for minimum width of pavement. So with our installation of utilities, we will certainly meet that width requirement along the entire frontage of our project. Next one. Another visual, a lot of concern. I guess I'll start with the middle. This is across the street from Alba Road. This is our site. The road and the basin are kind of in the middle. The green, that's existing vegetation. Here's the water tower. Our engineer, they'll talk about it. There's different models. There's the very vertical tall ones, and then he was actually able to find one similar that we use down the road at Springbrook. It's a less tall water tower. It'll be below the tree line. Just to give you a perspective, here's Otsego Lake. So you go up and over the mountain, we're on the other side. So in terms of visual impact from downtown, we feel we've got it placed in the right location. Then as you zoom in, you can kind of see here is our road right there. Here is, if we went above ground poles, they would be here, but we're working with NYSEG to put it below grade. They require a 30-foot easement. Again, Greg will get into that. So we're going to put some vegetation there. And then the blue, this is the basin in the non-flood condition. It's a wet pond that holds water. I have so much fun talking about your stuff. But I'll let him get to that. So we'll have standing water. It will have aerators to keep it fresh, so it won't get stagnant. Encourage clear water and fish and whatever else they want to have in there. And they'll have a safety fence around it. I think think that's about it for me. I think we'll hold questions to the end and agree to let you get into urban architecture next. No? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm rezoning with RZ Engineering, and I'm in charge of the trilogy for this, which is water, sewer, and stormwater for this. So, Scott, you kind of talked about the utilities a little bit, which is great, because then I can focus on what kind of, those are things you can't see, the water and the sewer under the ground, or can't see except for the tower, which I think Scott's done a good job of addressing. I can focus on the stormwater, which I know is a concern to everybody, so. Earlier this year, there was a concern about when the trees were removed to try and test for geotechnical, some stormwater concerns, so we had, first thing we did was we looked at the regulations for the trees, and there's some regulations right there. We didn't cut down more than 30%. So we were within that component. And then what we did was we went and we did a inspection report and evaluated the entire site along with the entire water course where the site discharges all the way down the hill to the existing sediment pond, which is right along 28. Evaluated that and where it discharged underneath 28, which flows down along 28 into the village and then eventually to the lake. We kind of tried to keep an eye on sediment where it was leaving. Where it leaves our site is there's a little pit in the site. Let me go back to that pit in the site is right there. And there's a pipe that goes underneath the road to the other side here, and then a little creek, I wouldn't call it a creek because it's not really running all the time. It runs a lot, but not all the time. And what it does is it flows down the side of the slope here into this sediment pond that was constructed years ago by one of the local municipalities to catch sediment. Now that sediment pond not only takes a very, very small portion of water off of ours, but it also takes it from all the way up here. There's a lake up in here, or a pond up in here that discharges, but all of it comes down through and hits that. And so this thing catches some sediment all the way through and takes care of that. So what we did was we took a looked at this outlet point, which is not really controlled right now. It looks like this. And found that the sediment pond was doing its job, and our site was also doing its job, but we also wanted to commit ourselves to being good stewards of neighbors and the environment. So what we did was we did this evaluation, and based on this evaluation, we tried to contact the DEC and see if we needed a SWIP permit. Typically, the DEC's language is that the DEC says that if you take down the trees but you don't take out the roots, it's not considered soil disturbance because you're not disturbing the soil. The roots stay, the soil stays. So what we did when we took these trees down was we took that under consideration and left the stumps of the trees, except for in the areas where we had to get in and do geotechnical testing, and then all the vegetation on the ground also stayed, so we did not disturb the soil. The DEC agreed. They issued us a letter, and we did make application for permit to force their hand. They weren't really into commenting, so we made an application for a permit, and they denied us and told us we don't need a permit because there's no disturbance. So basically, the DEC said you don't need one. Regardless of that, the owner said, well, let's treat it like we're gonna permit it anyway. So we did a SWIP mailbox up here, prepared a report, and we've been inspecting this to comply with regulations, even though we don't need to, and even though we don't have a permit, because it's not required. So that's this half of this. So I've kind of touched on what the kind of existing conditions of the site are. So after the site's completed, we're going to have some proposed measures that are done. So we had to do a SWIP that we've submitted for the proposed development. So we designed this stormwater management pond. It's called a wet pond. It's going to have some water in the bottom. And it'll be deep, 6 to 8 feet deep, which is going to collect sediment. and pollutants that leave our site before they're allowed to discharge out of this same discharge point. Although instead of looking like this, it's gonna have a concrete structure and a hole in the side, and it'll be able to regulate the flow coming in and out of that pond that we just created. So that, we also have several other green infrastructure measures we're putting in to help with the runoff reduction that's required by the DEC. Those things are conservation of natural areas, tree plantings, rooftop disconnect, vegetated swales, and porous pavement. It's important to note here that the pond itself and the rooftop disconnect are the only two we need in order to meet the DEC's requirements. All the other ones that are on here and all these other measures are over and above what's required and will be provided by the owner to meet the DEC stipulates that you have to meet this requirement. It's called runoff reduction, and the minimum that you have to meet is 20% of the water quality volume. We meet the entire water quality volume, so we're providing about 80% more treatment than's required, over and above what the DEC's manual says. If you take a look at this chart here, or this table right here, that pond that I just showed you, maxed out the 100-year storm event right now, that what flows through that pipe and onto other people's property down to the sediment pond and to the lake is about 88.5 CFS. That pond knocks it down to 6. So we're taking about 85–90% of the water, removing out, not only are we cleaning it, but we're knocking it down so that you got a lot less impact on the lake for harmful algal blooms and all those other things that go on at that lake. So this project is actually going to increase the water quality, not only leaving our site, but going to the lake. Let's see. We had one other thing we were talking about, which was groundwater, and then I think I'm about done. Groundwater, we had a geotechnical engineer go out and excavate some soil pits. Number one, for testing for our stormwater practices, which are required by the DEC, but also number two, to find out if we hit groundwater for seeker, and then in case, we have some excavated slopes and other things in here to cut to create the site itself. And if we hit groundwater, that will change some of our designs. They did not hit any. It's more than 6 feet down. So if you're going to sink a well in there, you got to go down way more than that in order to get water. So there was no groundwater found. So
Just quick, for those of us that are.
stormwater pollution prevention plan. So
Sweepy.
Yes. Yeah, sweepies, they call that out west, or just said that. Sweepy, yeah, out west, that's what they call it.
So as Mr. Zona pointed out, the owner is not doing the minimum to meet DEC requirements. We're going well above and beyond to make sure that we've got a commitment as the owner to the stewardship of this property and this project, which is important to us. We're going beyond that.
It's a benefit.
It's a benefit, that's right. Benefit, less water is going down into that southern pond and the river, and it's treated. Right. So one of the other concerns was the cutting of the trees, in which I know there was some angst locally, an understatement. We had looked at the ordinance, and we were allowed to cut up to 30%, and we cut far less than that. And that was required in order to do this type of analysis, geotechnical report that was prepared. There's some test pits and borings, so it wasn't willy-nilly, it was planned out, and I believe that was supported by, we actually got sued over it. I think the village did, it was supported by the court, that there was no violation of local ordinance, and we were allowed to proceed. One of the other concerns was traffic that the board had. Traffic, and the board, I think correctly so, now retained its own independent traffic engineer who did a study and found, as we highlighted, not going to do it quicker, but here on the far right of the PA, that is not very impactful due to the amount of traffic generated by the site in a certain period of time. So they did not have any recommendations regarding the road except for possibly widening that, which we'll get to here at the end. They did have, there was some talk about sidewalks. I think they came up with that there could be some modifications to sidewalks that were farther away from the project site, not up towards the project because of the topography and encountering narrow right of ways and things of that nature. Another concern the board had was the substation, electrical substation. If we could handle that with this new project in the middle of the road. Mr. Kirkpatrick was very instrumental in doing a lot of work behind the scenes with NICIG. And we just recently received a NICIG letter that basically says no new substation is needed and no changes to the substation are required because it can handle this increased load, which we'll talk about in the engineers with the passive and whatnot. Yes.
Hi, I'm Joe Perino, the architect, and I just wanted to say that the architecture has not changed. So I'll just go through it as a review relatively quickly, and if you have any questions about that. So the apartment building is a 2-story, 24-unit apartment building. There's 16 one-bedroom and 8 two-bedrooms. And that really hasn't changed since the last time we came. Here's all the elevations for the apartment building. And this slide is mainly talking about the height, that we're not over the 30-foot mark, so that we don't have to get a variance. And in your ordinance, the height of the building on a steep slope roof like this is to the average height to the middle of that roof. We have chimneys, but the chimneys, the height limitation shall not apply to chimneys that occupy less than 10% of a roof area measured in the plan, and that's in the zoning law 300-29. So the chimneys aren't part of that height. It's the center of the roof, or the midpoint. And here's the renderings. Has not changed since last time. Again, we're kind of looking at fern layover as kind of our looking towards that as something that has been successful in the village, and we're kind of using that architectural style. Here's the townhouses. Again, have not changed. There's 2 clusters of these townhouses. We see the first floor and the second floor. We have they're both 2 stories. These here are 2-bedroom. You can see 2 bedrooms upstairs. But the ones in the back have 3 bedrooms. There's a ADA, a handicap accessible bedroom and bathroom on the lower level. So out of these, we'll have 2 3-bedrooms and 4 2-bedrooms per cluster. And again, you can see here, because of the width is a little narrower, instead of 28 feet, we have 26 feet to the midpoint of the roof. So again, under the 30. And here's the rendering showing one cluster of the townhomes. So we decided Bassett wants to be as green as possible. And we looked at what's really going on now and how do we push making these buildings as green as possible. And so we decided to have them passive house certified. And so earlier when we came through 7 months ago, we talked about a geothermal well, a geothermal field. But once we decided to go down the passive house certification, the amount of energy that we're using, really, we couldn't justify a geothermal wells because we're using so little energy because they're so well designed. So we have an expert here, Josh, who is Josh Evans, who owns Simple Integrity. He's done a couple of passive house certified buildings here in the village, and I want him to talk about some of these issues because he's an expert at it, who's more versed on it than I am.
we're really excited to be taking these projects and heading Passive House with them. As we look at the amount of energy that buildings use, it's a great place to sort of start as reducing your energy footprint. And so, like Joe was saying, you know, when you look at these buildings, we're able to reduce the heating and cooling loads by almost 90%, which means that we don't need geothermal, we don't need fossil fuels. It also helps when we look at the amount of power we need from NICEAG. It's fractional compared to if we needed to run much larger, more complex systems. The way Passive House works is it starts by simply reducing your load. And so if you need less energy, regardless of how you need to get that energy, you're going to be better off. And so Passive House, it has a lot of different strategies, but more insulation and better insulation, air sealing, so that we can reduce both energy loss as well as control the indoor air environments. When COVID came around, it really thrust to the forefront indoor air quality. And so all of a sudden, people began to care about the insides of their buildings because they were spending so much time in them. And so Passive House has really always focused on that. In addition to sort of energy savings, is creating a really healthy indoor air environment. And so filtered and balanced ventilation is a big piece of being able to provide that healthy indoor air quality to occupants. And then Passive House, it takes a lot of simple things and really applies them well. Things like shading and daylighting. The more daylighting you have, the less lights you need to turn on. The more shade you have in the summer from overhangs and windows and building orientation, the less cooling you need. And then flip side, in the summer, when the angle of the sun changes, you can try and take advantage of some of those solar gains. And so it's kind of it's a great fit for projects like this because you can really make use of the density and the resources that you have to create a building that just needs a whole lot less energy.
So with the Passive House USA construction, it allows us to move away from fossil fuels. So the building heating and air conditioning, as well as the generation of domestic hot water, is all electric, and we're primarily proposing the use of air source heat pumps. So those are systems that use a refrigerant cycle to be able to pull heat from the outside and bring it into the inside during the heating season or the winter. And then you reverse that cycle to provide air conditioning in the summer. Passive House also, as Josh said, is very concerned about indoor air quality. So we're going to use energy recovery units to provide outdoor air, fresh outdoor air to the spaces, as well as exhaust contaminants from inside the building. And then we run it through an energy recovery unit to exchange the heat for the cooling and precondition and outdoor air before we deliver it to the space, further reducing our heating and cooling loads. Domestic hot water takes a lot of energy to heat the hot water up we're using for domestic loads, but we are using hybrid domestic water heaters that you have a refrigerant circuit cycle in there, a heat pump to generate the hot water, and then has a basic resistance heat when that needs additional boost. We're also providing electrical vehicle requirements. So a part of the requirements for the Passive House USA is for the townhomes is one EV charger per townhome, and then about 50% for the apartment building. So there would be 10 EV chargers for the apartment building. So those are will be provided as part of that project.
I think we're good. Just a few other points. The water tower, which will be turned over to the village, we don't expect we're going to need a variance for that. It's not going to be over 30 feet. As staff pointed out on the initial elevation, it's going to be on the reverse slope, so it will not be viewed from the lake. It will be covered by the year-round force code on the site. So we came up with 14 benefits for the village. And these are not exclusive, and others may arise during the design. Workforce housing, I think the village identified that in the 2016 timeframe as something that's important. Like in state, categorically, it's important to the hospital. We want to have full-time employees living on site. The residences are restricted for passive personnel. We want to have those people in the community, as opposed to temporary nurses and whatnot. There's a great reliance on us by mass in many organizations. Increased tax base. So this is a fairly significant monetary commitment by the hospital. The owner has decided that even though it may be entitled to a tax exemption from real estate taxes, it's going to remain on the tax rolls for the benefit of the community. Improvements to land trail access for the general public. So I think as Scott pointed out, there's 5 spaces that are going on the project up towards the entryway to the trail. So we can take some of the pressure hopefully off of the own property and people parking on the road and so on and so forth. So we think that's about it. The owner is committed to using the local contractor with Mr. Evans' group, who uses local supply chains as much as possible. And we're excited about that. We're excited about having Josh on the team for that passive house because he's got that experience. If permitted, and we only say that for 2 reasons. If the rights of way allow, and we're still looking into that, for the widening of Averill Road in front of the project, the owner is committed to doing that. No questions. If hopefully, working with the village, if the owners of properties that are across the road, if their consent is required, we'll work with the village on that. So if permitted, we're committed to doing that widening. If permitted, high-speed internet, which I think is, I've learned is a big question mark around here. The hospital is working with its IT department and your local providers spectrum on possibly having high-speed internet, because we want it for our project and we want to make it available to the neighbors. New water tower and water lines. I believe the water tank for the village is how old, you know? It's the 60s, not automated, right?
Correct.
Village folks have to go up and
You have to manually turn it on to fill the tank.
so we're going to put in a brand new water tower, automated, so they don't have to do that. The new water lines, which I think will benefit that area of the village. The water pumps, service lines up Averill Road, and at the existing pump house, which is down near the existing tank. So it's like a municipal parking lot. The municipal parking lot. Improvements to the controls for the water system, extension of the sewer main along Averill Road. New phase 3 power, which could have possibly done 1, we're doing phase 3, so that will be available along Averill Road. Lowering flows, I think we covered this, lowering flows out of the site, down the slope, into the settlement pond, and eventually goes to the significant improvements coming off of our site. That what it is now and what it was before the trees were planted. Is that correct?
Yeah. Those numbers that you saw are pre-tree cut. So the 88 CFS that's getting knocked down to 6. The 88 is pre-tree cut. The 80, yes, yes. So it's cubic feet per second, sir. That's a full rate.
Incorporation of the new storm retention system on site, which is significant. We're going to talk about, and we're working on the gallon issue with that spring and how that's managed into our site. And reduction of water and sediment, so that goes along with what you spoke about the significant reduction.
Positive impact on
Positive impact on the, so there won't be any sediment overloading. In fact, it'll be significantly less than what it was before the trees were cut. So as you can see, there's been a lot of work put into this to get the data points. It's important the board has legitimate concerns about traffic, energy, groundwater. And the groundwater table is at least over 6 feet, if not greater, we've got a geotechnical report we can file with the village. It establishes average, I think, would be even right on the soil calculations. So that's part of the drilling and the boring that took place on site. So with that, we can open it up for questions of the board members.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It's very interesting. I'm going to work backwards. In terms of the stormwater runoff, that dramatic reduction that you were describing, how did you go about the monitoring of that? Over what period of record did you do that?
New York State has, I would say, 7 years of stormwater data, maybe longer. And it all gets updated, and then what happens where you draw the information from, there's a triangulation system in New York State where they have weather stations, and what they do is you plug in your site, and then you give it a GPS location, and it will take the 3 or the 5 closest monitors with weather data, and it will give you the number to give for a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, 25, 50, and 100 year storms. And then you plug that into the software, and it will spit out when I analyze it, it will spit out the numbers for those. The flow rates, and I can do it under pre-condition with trees on the site, and I can do it under post-condition with the entire development.
So they use soil types and so on and so forth to make that. That's how they predict flooding and winter.
Right, they use TR55, which is called Technical Release 55. It's a computer. Well, it wasn't computerized when they first came out with it in the 70s, but it's common use.
So there wasn't a monitoring system. This was a calculation.
Correct.
Like,
One of that's used by the DEC.
I'm not challenging that.
It's a standard method for calculations from our run.
Thanks. You said, this is for Joe, the architect, and Josh as well. You described this very interesting system for energy efficiency. In your remarks, you said the design, or at least the look of the buildings hadn't changed. But with the introduction of this concept, or this application of all the little circles I saw around that diagram, the one that struck me as being a great coincidence that you'd already figured it out, or it had to be changed, was the shading and daylighting. So is there going to be any reconfiguration of roofs or orientation of the building to take advantage of the shading and daylighting criterion?
So one of the requirements is you have to have a consultant, a passive house consultant. We didn't invite that team here, but we've been talking with them about, do we need to reorient everything to make this work for certification? And because of, the overhangs that we had, and, the windows that we don't have these huge windows everywhere. It's not a big curtain wall or anything like that. They're normal residential windows. As long as we can get the triple pane windows that are required, that give you a really good U value, and increase the insulation of our roof and our walls, like usually it's, the roof is like an R38, and we're talking about like an R80 now.
I'm sorry, an R what?
Usually code is R38.
Yeah.
And that's what we usually do, but the prescription is R49. We're gonna go up to R80.
80.
In the roof. And in the walls, they're gonna be much larger. I don't know if you've seen some of the local construction, but usually have a 2x6 wall. Here we have a 2x6 wall, and then we have insulation that's greater than 6 inches on the outside of the wall, so that you have continuous insulation. So while not having to reorient all the buildings so that they're facing south or north or whichever is best, the construction of the buildings and what we've already designed into them with the sloped roofs and long overhangs, our consultant said, no, we don't have to reorganize that. You can still become certified. And Thank you, Josh, or anything?
Yeah, no, I mean, Joe's kind of spot on there. The traditional gable shape that these buildings are lends itself very nicely to passive house. And so, especially also with multifamily, with the added density, we're actually focusing on our cooling loads more than our heating loads. And so while with a small single family home, sometimes it really matters if you get like solar gain. On a multifamily, we have so many people inside the building, we have so many appliances, we have so many electrical circuits. We're getting a lot of what's called internal gains. And so on a multifamily, it's not as imperative that we swing it and rotate it. It's more important that the overall sort of like shape of the building fits. And these buildings already had all that kind of in place. And so a lot of what goes into the passive house features of this building are kind of all underneath the walls. And so the thicker walls that, that we need doesn't change the look of the building.
Right. So I'm a little familiar with the LEED certification. This is a system I'm unfamiliar with. So to get certified, do you need to tap into, to show performance under every one of these circles, every one of these criteria?
So,
Or a little bit here, more there?
so passive house certification, a big piece of it is an energy model. It's called Wolfie software. And what it does is it provides a climate-specific energy budget for a building. So we get so many kilowatts per square foot per year. And that's based on building size, number of occupants, everything like that. And so that really drives how much energy we're allowed to spend on heating the building. And it drives how much cooling we can spend. It gives us a limit to how much energy we can use from our ventilation system. And so you kind of put all those pieces together, and that sort of comes up with our energy budget. But then on top of the energy budget, there are a number of requirements for fresh air, how many air changes per hour we have to have, what level of filtration we have to have in the system. When you go for passive house, you're also required on the way to passive house to get Energy Star certified, EPA's Indoor Air Plus, and Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready Home. And so those are like stepping stones on the way to passive house. Sometimes people will go after one of those independently, but passive house requires you to meet those metrics kind of as a part of it all. And that's some of what brings in using materials inside the building. They have to be zero or low VOC, paints, flooring, cabinets, finishes, everything like that. And so passive house is different than LEED. LEED focuses on some different aspects. Passive house focuses primarily on energy and sort of indoor air quality, but allows Energy Star and EPA's Indoor Air Plus and those programs to sort of sweep in all of the other components that go into the building. And so to be passive house certified, the energy model is a big part, and then you submit it to FIAS, which is Passive House Institute US. That's the governing body for the US. And they have an entire engineering and technical team that review every project. And they do all kinds of modeling and different things like that. And there's also a rater who is a third party who comes along and does site inspections. And so they show up before we pour the foundation to inspect the air seal, inspect the insulation. They come during the project for all kinds of site inspections. And so they're there probably a dozen or more times throughout the project to make sure that the build is complying with the standard and the plans that were submitted.
Very good.
So we do have a consultant that we're working with to do the Wolfie model now, Sustainable Comfort, and we also have a rater on board. So we're working together with Greg, with Josh, and our consultant to get that model submitted to Passive House. We've already registered the project to Passive House.
Okay, I don't know when the appropriate time to do this, I mentioned this to Cindy, I looked at the seeker document.
All right, so that, we are gonna move on to that. So did you have any other questions?
I think if we're, let me just, I made some. No, my other questions will be based
Pertain,
on this,
yes.
will be around the secret discussion.
We weren't exactly sure of the procedures we would go through and when exactly we would review this, but I understand you do have questions on it, so while the consultants are here, we thought it was very advisable to go through part one.
Okay, so do we want to address my questions, or do you want to go through?
I think if we're gonna go through it, let's just kind of go through it, and when we get to one where you particularly have a question,
Okay.
we will address it at that time. Just say, this is one where I had a question.
Okay.
We need to open the other public hearings.
You know what, it was as soon after, I certainly can, I don't know how many people are here for those. I'll open it, but, so if anyone wants to speak on the two public hearings tonight, proposed local law number 5 of 2023, amend chapter 270-6, vehicle and traffic regulations by adding a stop intersection on Lake Street, east and west of Chestnut. Our second one, proposed local law number 6 of 2023, amend local law number 2 of 2023, and vehicle and traffic regulation sections to adjust the location of boat trailer parking on Fish Road. And that last one was, as noted, a local law passed earlier, but when we got feedback from boat trailer owners, et cetera, we learned that there's probably a better location on Fish Road than we had initially stipulated. So it's just switching where the trailers will be parked on Fish Road. The other one does pertain to concerns that were addressed at some of our meetings by pedestrians having to cross from basically the Otesaga side over to proceed on Chestnut to our downtown. Is there anyone who would like to speak about either of those? I'll leave them open then, and let's proceed on to part one. You want to walk us through it, Cindy?
Yeah, I certainly can do that. I know that, that Joe has some specific areas. My first comment is on page 1, under brief description of the proposed action. And that is that, as written, I just want to make sure we get part 1 100% right.
Exactly.
It says that there's the construction of an access road for a new water tower, but it doesn't seem to include the new water tower. And I think we want to make sure, unless I'm misreading, that we're 100% clear that the water tower is also part of the project.
That is part of the project.
So that paragraph
Access
may,
road for the new water tower is part of the project. It will not be seconded.
So you would make an addendum to this?
We can find an addendum.
I don't know if there were any other comments on page 1?
Yeah, it says the project will include the construction of an access road for a new water tower.
They want to clarify that it will include not just.
I know.
the water tower.
Could it just be and construction of a new water tower? Is that what you're requesting?
Yes, I mean,
And construction of a new water
the
tower?
water tower and the access road too.
Yeah.
Construction of an access
Put the
road.
water tower first and then say and.
Yeah. Anything else on page 1? Is there anything on page 2? I have a couple comments on page 2. Under date for planning board, I think that needs to change to October. And under date for HCARB, I think that needs to change to October. And under county agencies, we may want to add the planning department.
I apologize, can you go through, can you just list out B, A, B, C?
Sorry, B, change the date to October. D, change the date to October. And E, add the planning department.
E, the planning department.
Yep,
Let's see what's going on.
at Seagull County Planning Department.
In addition to the health department. right?
Correct.
Mhm.
Joe, did you have anything else? All right, are there any comments on page 3?
Should, I apologize, Cindy, should BG state October as well for DEC?
I don't know if you have submitted to DEC yet or not. I thought that may have happened.
We are submitting to DEC. I don't know if we've done it exactly just yet. I know we talked about it. We do have to submit to the DEC for their 5-acre review. So DEC will provide a stormwater review of the entire project. Should that be in October? Yeah, we should submit.
October?
All right, I believe Joe has a comment on page 3.
Yeah, C4D, this is just for the purpose of completeness, what parks serve the project site, and you have 2 of them. We have other parks as well that I think are amenities for this project, Pioneer, Council Rock, and Badger. Is there any reason not to include those?
The applicant has none.
It covers all that, like I said.
What are the names of those? Pioneer?
Pioneer. Are you wanting to include all the village parks,
Yes.
other than
Even
Ferry
3
Spring and
Mile,
3
Ferry
Mile?
Spring, or-
Frankly, I'm trying to make this look as good as possible.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
So if the parks are, project is be served by all those parks, yeah, put them all. I didn't mean to be exclusive.
Okay, there's also 3 Mile. or-
Yeah,
and Ferry Spring.
anyone who'd be, they'd be a village resident, they could use
Use
all of them.
those parks.
So, listing all the village parks, it would be
So we have 7, yeah.
Lakefront Park, Pioneer Park, Council Rock Park, Badger Park, 3 Mile Park, and Ferry Spring Park. I've noted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's,
Double day. Double day.
And
oh,
which is already
Doubleday,
there.
Doubleday Field's already on there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just the 7th.
Yeah,
Cooper's
private. Not a public park.
So I have 7,
7 should
Yep.
be
I
correct.
have 7.
Yeah, with Doubleday,
Mhm.
yeah.
On DBB, I guess it is, you've got that all documented, and we had that stuff the last time about the amount of property to be physically disturbed, so you'll have a backup for that 12 plus or minus acres.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, we're final designing the municipal water tank where it'll change below your threshold. We'll get an updated number.
My next comment is D1, I guess it is D1 and 2. Is this a cluster conservation layout proposal? You say no, but certainly on the 57-acre parcel, you're clustering things on the fewer acres. It seems to be a yes to that. I don't know why you said that. It's not a subdivision. It's not about lots.
Right, and there's 56 acres subject.
Right, and you're clustering your development on a 12-acre.
Well, we have to check the
I think we need to
definition,
further,
because I think the
definition.
cluster it has a definition
Yeah.
by the
For
state.
lots and subdivision.
Yeah.
And I don't
It's a lot reduction.
Yeah.
Traditional suburbs, it's taking your acreage and putting your housing on a reduced number. It's a different interpretation of cluster, so we'll double check it.
Okay,
And subdivision as well. There is a specific.
right, and it's not a subdivision.
Yeah, it's not something.
Right.
Yeah, so that's accurate.
That's all I had on page
3.
Page
Page 4.
4. You have something,
There are 2 boxes that aren't checked yes or no, and they're under D2. Will there be on-site dewatering or processing of excavated materials? I think that should be checked no.
Wasn't that just if A was checked?
Yeah, so it says
If
if
yes, so
Oh,
we
I
don't
missed it.
do it.
Okay, my apologies. Anyone have anything else on page 4?
I have back up at G. Does the proposed action include non-residential construction, including expansion? And I think you have no there, but we are doing a water tank. Is that not appropriate to that? So a yes to the water tank?
Yeah,
G.
it's non-residential, they're saying our construction of a water tank is non-residential, so should we say yes? It's a municipal. It's also part of,
You'd be building that without the residential portion, so it's also part of the residential.
And does it qualify as a structure?
So maybe that should be, so, and it's got a much broader purpose. I'm just trying to make sure it's covered. So that's a thought.
We should look at the sequel.
Yeah.
All right, so you're looking at G and to decide if it's a yes.
right, and if we write yes, then we'll fill out the form, the size and sort of.
Under H, you say, if yes, the purpose of the impoundment, the stormwater management facility, but you are going to be having other storage of water in the water tank, so I didn't know if you wanted to include the water tank there as well.
So you're saying we probably should add the water tank, comma water tank?
It struck me that way.
Yeah.
As the purpose of the impoundment.
Yeah, it's another kind of impoundment. And then at the bottom of the page, B, would the action result in alteration, increase, decrease, or size of encroachment within existing wetland water band? And you say no. And I think your description warrants a yes, because you are going to reduce impact on wetlands from your description. But also, you explained it, but my question before I heard you was, how dependent is this development on the increased use and maintenance and dredging of Clark Pond? You're saying you're actually going to reduce water flow and sediment flow into Clark Pond, but they also call for increase or decrease in the response. So again, that's an attribute of the project.
The only impact we would have on that pond would be site-specific for us. I don't know if it's measurable. If you were to do an evaluation of the pond itself, the sediment basin, and the watershed contributory to it, we're a very small portion of that. I don't know if it would be an impact on it one way or the other.
Well, as I recall from
Because it's off-site.
Yeah, as I recall from the history of the Clark Pond, it was built as partly for sediment control of that area. So I'm saying this is a good thing to report. You're going to decrease the impact on this offsite sediment pond. It's your call, but that's.
But I don't know if that's accurate or not. I guess that's my problem with it, I don't know if it impacts it one way or the other. I would say, the reason I say that is because there's the watershed that hits that pond mostly comes from up 28 and not from us.
But really, we know.
Very small, so the impact from our site is, whether it's measured, I don't know what's the measure for that. I guess you could make a general statement, as you suggested, that it's gonna impact it and decrease it, but.
It doesn't hurt you as I see it either. It's saying it decreases it, even whether it's measurable or not, although you've already indicated percentage decrease, which is smart.
I just need to make a statement and have somebody go, well, how much? And I can't,
So to your point, Mr. Trustee, so for your concerns, the Clark Pond, which is the southern pond, should be marked yes, and then in the if yes, identify the decrease.
Yeah, well, your numbers say there's this 80% decrease from whatever's happening on your site, so.
It's a fair effective. You're right, it says effective, it doesn't say.
But it doesn't specifically.
It says, are you decreasing it too?
Maybe an eyedropper in a pond.
But it also says you can give by name, water index number, wetland map number, or geographic description. So it doesn't state in there that you actually have to put what that number is.
Down at B, Matt, down at the bottom, it says increase or decrease.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could mark yes and put decrease.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, who can argue that it's a decrease?
Is that
The
the,
burden of proof shifts.
Yes.
Yeah,
is that the actual name, Clark Pond?
I would use a geographic descriptor like latitude and longitude.
I have the name, but can't recommend it, because I have the plan, we have the plan. No, something else. I know these two.
Let's see. So I'm on page 5, if anybody else is there. On page 5, under Roman 3 at the top, what are the results? Cause disturbance to bottom sediments. So what you said, so if you say yes to this question, then you have to address these others. And there had been discussion. I mean, Martin reported sometimes past that sediment ponds have been dredged. You're not going to be adding, you're going to be reducing the sediment load on that pond. So you can decide whether the answer is yes or no to that. In your own sediment pond, or your own stormwater collection pond, will that have to be drained?
It'll be cleaned periodically. There's a maintenance in the SWIP. There's a maintenance schedule and not only for time, but also procedures that needs to get done to maintain that.
I guess my overall question is, again, to avoid collateral attacks on this, how do you propose to account for, in this part of the seeker, the maintenance of that? There will be a bottom sediment, there will be sediment disturbance.
There'll be collection of sediment.
Which will disturb, the question there is disturbance to bottom sediments. So it seems to me whatever is going on there will be periodically interrupted. So I'm just, again, with a yes, some of these other questions will have to be addressed and answered. That
All right, we need to
would
read
just.
the whole section.
Anything else on page 5, Joe?
I'm looking quickly, no.
Anything on page 6?
Yeah, this one, on the middle of the page, Roman 3 again, where is the stormwater runoff going to be directed? So you're going to have this on-site facility, but then you say in your narrative, all stormwater to be directed to the on-site facility, which is the pond, that'll have a valve regulating it, and discharge to existing municipal infrastructure, the road culvert. And I didn't know what we really had by way of.
There's a pipe that goes under Admiral Road right now that discharges to.
And that'll be-
Same discharge point.
And that discharge is down into the sediment pond.
Yeah, it goes down through the woods, down there, so.
Okay.
Which is not enclosed all the way to the sediment pond. It's,
Right, right.
Yeah.
very long way.
And because of your storage capacity for that, the capacity of the drainage ditch is not going to be overtaxed. That's,
No, it'll be, it'll gain capacity because we're gonna discharge less water.
that was one of the.
So there'll be more room in it for somebody else or whoever else.
Anything on page 6?
Nope, that's
7?
it. 7. Under J, I was confused at the nomenclature here. You say, the question is, will it result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels or generate substantial new demand? And then you say refer to the engineering traffic report. But there will be an increase in traffic. The question is what kind of an impact it will have. So I was confused when I look at the streets report, Cindy, for on April Road, where is, I can get to that streets report.
Can the operative wording on is substantial?
Yeah, typically what happens with that,
So we relied on the village traffic engineering report at item 11 on the summary. There are no significant adverse traffic impacts because of full development of the proposed
Right. So that was the significant adverse impacts versus increase in traffic. There's an objective, there's a qualitative judgment and a quantitative judgment. The quantitative judgment is going to be more traffic. The qualitative judgment is it's not going to have a substantial adverse impact. So I was just, I saw the distinction between those two, and I would recommend that you conform it so that you're answering the question.
typically, when you do a traffic study and that question is geared toward it, New York State DOT requires you to do a traffic study if you exceed 100, your development exceeds 100 vehicles per hour, and we're not even close to that. So you would say that you, under that premise, which is a New York State DOT premise, there would be no significant impact. You would maybe need to do a traffic study. And we've kind of done one, but so I would say that the impact, regardless of whether it's quantitative or qualitative, is neither is substantial.
So
You've already done the study.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
it's up to you.
difference is
I just
substantial
pointed out.
versus significant. And
Okay.
I think I would agree, as sort of the consensus of the board, having reviewed the Passero, David Cruz, April Road traffic study that was distributed to the board. It did note that there was no substantial increase. It certainly didn't exceed any levels that would necessitate any remediation of it. So I think I would be content with that response.
You know, I've had this discussion come up with other boards, and they've made the same argument that you're making, you know, in their due diligence and their desire to understand what the impacts are in a similar question. And it has to do with, in this other few instances I've dealt with, it has to do with, you know, the capacity of the road. They're like, well, you know, we have 100 cars going down that road in a day, but you're gonna add, you know, 10, or we got 1,000 cars in a day, you're gonna add 100, you're gonna add 10%. And the answer, the correct way to look at that, in my opinion, being that I've done traffic engineering before, I did it on Long Island, so I have a little experience with traffic. But the real way is, the road's designed for 10,000 cars, if you're only using 1,000, you're using this much capacity in the road, it's not being used, so add another couple of cars. So the similar, I think Passero tried to make that point in their report. There's nobody using the road to begin with. You add a few cars to it, yes, you're increasing traffic, but are you affecting the capacity of the road? The answer is no.
I think I might side with Joe on this one, though. I think checking yes there makes you fill out additional information that will be beneficial to the review of the board. Because the questions that are answered show that we know the answers to this question. We know what the peak is. We know that you're including EV chargers. I mean, there's additional information that could be included here, or maybe you check no and you fill out the yes boxes anyway. But I think the legwork has gone into sort of determining the answers to these questions.
I like that suggestion.
So check no and then provide the information for us.
Can't hurt you.
You've done the study. No, it's not that you're compelled.
Not only do you have the study,
I agree with Joe, I'm not sure which Joe she's referring to.
But I think now they're both saying it.
Yeah,
Oh, I think they're both agreeing.
Here's an addendum.
Yeah, I think leaving it at, no,
No,
but
but
then
then
checking all the
complete-
little yeses below it, just to show, that's why we're saying no, is
Yeah.
really what it's, what you're doing. Doesn't hurt us at all, doesn't hurt the project, and it does,
yeah,
it helps, I
in the
think, yeah.
review process.
Good point.
On the same page 8, this one puzzled me. It says during construction, there's gonna be 10 tons per month of waste produced? I mean, I just was kind of startled by that volume.
Where are you, Joe?
I'm on paragraph R, the last box at the bottom of page 8. The first,
Well, and construction was dumpsters.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's kind of an estimate of how many dumpsters and how many tons per dumpster. I guess we could verify that. Now that we have Josh, we did this without a contractor on board, so now we have a contractor on board.
I said 10 tons per month.
Yes.
You realize that's one small dumpster.
So it's not that much in the world of construction.
I'm not saying we're gonna produce that much, but just to put that in perspective, that is one small dumpster per month.
I thought all these construction practices were now, and you just had almost zero waste on site, so.
That's
the future, yeah.
That's not,
That's not
that sounds like a lot, of waste, but that's,
Okay.
yeah.
I won't go on it. I'm on to page 9. So on page 9, at the bottom of the last box under B, I think there's just an arithmetic mistake. You start out with forested land of 57 acres, and then you say acreage after project completion is 10 acres. But you're only using 10 acres. Shouldn't it be 46.255 acres of forested land after the project is done? Because I added
Yes.
up.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
we were
mathematical error.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And then on page 10 at the bottom, let's just see. The question is the project within 2,000 feet of any site on the environmental site remediation database? Aren't we within 2,000 feet of the old landfill that's got methane vents and everything else on it? I was surprised that he said no to that.
I don't think we're that close to the old dump.
Wasn't
I
2,000?
mean, I might be wrong, but what are the properties between us and the?
That's different.
It doesn't, you don't have to be contiguous to it, you just have to be within 2,000 feet. It's easy enough for you to.
Right, you
Yeah,
can
we
get on
can
the
check
maps
that.
and check it.
It's right at the top of the hill on the left. We don't want to confuse it with Mosa, which is to the right, which is just a transfer station.
Right.
But across 28, right below that cell tower, there was for many, many years a dump that was burning for years, but it has ceased burning now, to my knowledge. And you pulled into it and dumped over the bank, and every couple of days they added some more fill.
We can look into this.
Yeah, we'll check.
It probably is within 2,000 feet.
The question I read is, it has to be on the New York State DEC.
Yeah, that's gonna be the issue.
Yeah, is it on the database? That's what I
Base,
would-
So that's the, if,
Mhm.
is the project within, so
Right,
the
well,
engineer checked on the database and they put up with that.
yeah. But given your approach to this whole project, Martin, the landfill I'm talking about is as you go up the drive to the transfer station, that big mound on the right, wasn't that a former dump?
Is it
No,
here?
the dump was never on the right of the road going north.
Farther up.
It was, believe it or not, it was on the left.
Even on that map.
You went in through a tree-lined road, dirt road, and you opened up into a large area. I spent many hours up there shooting rats, which was pastime when we were kids.
So what are all the vents on the hillside?
I think there's probably in part some of that methane off the other side. It was a very large.
Joe, is that on this map, way up here?
Martin, can you see?
And, 2,000 feet, you're probably gonna get shit out.
I think that's well over 2,000, but
You
Yeah, I
do,
mean,
okay.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
That's what they're saying right there. So
It's the center button, yeah.
This is that the road, Martin, up to the transfer station?
I think so. Cindy's got
All
a
this
better thing. You can almost see the old dump on here.
I believe it's 4,000.
Is it the right-hand side or the left-hand side?
Left-hand side.
Left-hand
Coming
side.
into
Mosa is on the right, but that's purely
Yeah.
a transfer
So not on that side
station.
of the road, it's the other side of the road.
It is the left side, it would be on the west side of the road.
Do you know who owns it, Martin, who owns that land if we look on the
Yes.
map?
Jane.
That's what I thought.
Right, so this
And
side-
she has been doing work there. I don't know if there's any order requiring any remediation. But as Cindy scales it, it may be close to 4,000, shows how good I am at distances.
So this is what I was looking at, because up here, and Martin said it may have some relation, there are methane vents all up on this big field side here. I thought that had been a former landfill, but if there are methane vents, the question is there any connection to the concerns?
So what are the methane vents on the right-hand side of the road?
Right hand going towards Fly Creek.
Yeah, looks like it just.
Yeah,
That was that's the dump that I owned.
okay, that's what I'm.
I don't remember any dump over there.
That was before Mosa took over.
We'll review and see what we can.
The village or the town.
it appears, I think just ascertain that it's more than 2,000 feet.
Just suggestion, because these little
Yeah, absolutely.
trip wires were a problem
We can look
last
into
time.
that.
So then, so do you have anything on 10 or anybody else? I have something on
No, I don't.
11.
Page 11.
Yeah, let me just review my notes here. Okay, so on E2A, you call for a reference to the geotech report. And then, but you provide the answer of 11 feet. So, and that's the citation, the authority for that is your geotech report. That's 11.
Which before we forget, we can share that with you. I don't think the copies were provided.
That would be helpful.
And I think that's it, that's all I have.
That's all I have as well. George, Sydney.
How many copies do you?
We have 3.
3. Can you make sure Jenna gets one and she can scan and distribute to the board?
So thanks.
And page 8, I believe, on that report that's handed to you, the geotech is where the testing established, because I know it pops up on the secret form, that the water table is well below 3 feet. In fact, in some instances, they drove 12 feet and put in water table, there was some perched water and rocks, but not the water table.
Thanks.
All right, Joe, we've covered your questions. Did anyone else have anything they wanted addressed on Seeker Part 1? No?
We're ready for some motions?
I think we're ready for our motions.
So I will make a motion that the Village of Cooperstown Board of Trustees acts as lead agency for this project for the purposes of seeker.
Motion made, seconded by George, all in favor?
I will make a motion to classify this action as a type 1 action under 617.4, letter B, number 9. And that is based on the fact that approximately 12 acres are being disturbed within a site that is listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Motion made, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
As we consider a special permit for a multiple family dwelling of 36 units within the R1 Residential Conservation District, make a motion that we forward this application to the planning board and to HPARB for their recommendations.
And I think it's important to note, because they're the involved agencies, that this project requires no variances, so it does not need to go to ZBA as part of the
Yeah, I'll do that as a
separate one.
Yeah.
All right, so there's the motion,
I'll second it.
seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
And I will make a motion to forward this to the county planning department, given its proximity to State Highway 28 and the municipal boundary with the town of Otsego.
Motion made, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
Did you put in that motion that their recommendations should be back to us in advance of our October 23rd trustee meeting?
I believe we have to give them a minimum of 30 days, so I don't think we can
And because
stipulate.
it's 25th today?
We can certainly ask them to consider that, but I think legally they are required 30 days.
They have the right to use all of that if they wish to.
Yeah. I think it'd be good to encourage them, because I think it sets it back into December, our whole process otherwise. So it shorts them like 2 days, so let's hope that they can get that back in time. All right. Yes.
And just one question on the referrals to your planning and organization part, those would be the next meetings for those boards.
Correct.
So that would be each board on October 10th and planning board on October 17th.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to confirm that.
Yep.
Thank you.
And they'll also have one beaver at the same time.
Thank you for attending this evening.
Very helpful. Thank you for your input. Appreciate that.
Cindy, did you need any more of these?
No, I'll show you something.
Does she get this?
Yeah, this is not my purview.
Wait a second, what's that right?
Well, and send us back.
I like it.
It's not my purview.
What are you looking at?
Making a suggestion about a eagle.
Nice idea. Nice idea. Thank you. Does anybody else?
I think we have enough copies for all board members, we'll see that they
And
get
then
you.
could have one for the village.
Yeah, or Jackson. Jackson. I keep calling Chris Jackson, like I've done it 3 times.
Filed with the village.
It's bound to.
Everyone grab it. Sign it.
Alright, so is this a picture file?
You read it, and you're like, yeah.
Last time.
This is your pleasure.
It is, thank you. Oh, does it, I need my little USB guy too.
How many here did you get?
That's nice that it just lives inside the,
Step down to smaller.
that's a USB connector to the computers, and you can put it inside the
This is
clicker.
my clicker, but we've been using it with all of the stuff that's been going
That would
on.
have been used as a thing to get the proof that there's an environmental.
Should have brought like 3 shots of espresso.
That's what I believe it is. We'll check.
Just trying to help.
No, I appreciate it. We'll look at the,
Thank you for your vote. Thank you for your vote.
Of course.
Madam Mayor, thank you
Oh,
for your
we're
vote.
so pleased.
I can't vote, I just sit here on the phone.
Have you met my brother, the village attorney, Mark?
Yes, we went to the Woodstock.
Together.
Bird,
Well, he drove himself.
And when they had people dressed up like they'd been to Woodstock.
So that's interesting, we were looking at the site
I
and
said,
just how low this
guy
area
was
is.
there, he deserves this.
Good for you.
That's what it
I
sounds
thought it was a
like,
good
yeah.
meeting.
Can you put that in the drawer and then it'll
Very
just be
We
there?
always park at our house.
That's right.
And I did find a student for
Great. How's it, we don't have very many details on this yet.
It's coming, we're almost finished with
Grading.
grading upstairs. We're
Elevation,
making it
what's-
two
Yes, they have a top, they have a
So-
top.
Yeah, they do have topographical. This is, there's gonna be probably,
And the two are so.
yeah, did it say on there?
that-
There'll be a public hearing in
What a
November.
meeting probably.
This is the topo.
First
Energy
Yeah.
gospel, that's my bedtime.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
We
a
did
good
get
one.
comments from the others.
Yeah, each level is about 2,000.
Because it doesn't fall out from elevations.
You might just.
Very, very likely to be seven
Oh,
different,
maybe March.
elevation.
Our
Just wanna make sure I hear.
Mike Houston, he used to work with US Army, and he went independent.
Okay,
And he's done a lot of work for the team.
So, George, thank you for your visit. Thank you for a small.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
we're going to resume, we're going to end up closing our public hearing. We thank you for your presentation tonight, very appreciated. I've just closed the public hearings for proposed local law number 5 of 2023, amend chapter 270-6, vehicle and traffic regulations by adding a stop intersection on Lake Street, east and west, so adding 2 stop signs on Lake.
The only comment that I've heard outside of this process, where we did not hear comments, was from our street crew who were just concerned about large tractor trailer trucks that come down the left side of the lake and then need to turn onto Chestnut, and they make that turn by swinging out into the other lane, so they're taking up the majority of that intersection, and if there's a stop, they thought it might make that turn more difficult. If we could certainly try this, and we may get complaints.
Can I ask, I know we looked at, and that's, I think it has to do with what's occurring on the north side of Lake, but essentially people cross from Lake towards, for instance, Josh's Corner, and then they cross again, so they're crossing twice. Is there a reason that crosswalk can't be,
There's no sidewalk on the
There's
other
no
side.
sidewalk.
it doesn't bring it down, but can we in any way bring down sidewalk? That's what I was wondering.
Not in the next couple months, no. I mean, we could consider it for next year, but I would have to look at the site to see.
I was just, having waited, I'm sorry.
We had promised a full set,
Oh, thank you.
so we want to make sure we get that. We almost forgot.
Great, thank you so much,
Again.
Matt.
Yep, thank you, yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We could certainly look at it for the future. It's still going to necessitate some sort of traffic regulation.
Change, yeah.
Is part of the solution to the issue you raised to have the stop lines move back on Chestnut and then the car would have to proceed and poke its nose out, but if there's a big truck lumbering down, east, I guess, on Lake and I see them all the time.
Yeah.
Just trying to get around that corner.
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
It is.
But is there an issue with having the stop line move back?
We typically don't paint stop lines. We can't keep up with the painting we have now, much less painting stop lines.
Yeah, this one would be a special circumstance because of this traffic issue. And you're right about putting the sidewalk on the other side on the
It just makes sense to me to have them cross Lake once, because they're essentially crossing Lake, and then they're crossing Chestnut. And I've also, sort of waited for someone to cross on Chestnut, and then I pull out, and now they're slowly crossing Lake. Well, it's not frustrating, but it is
safety.
You know, a little bit of an unnecessary usage of two pathways when one would do.
And it's certainly within our right of way, so you could certainly put sidewalk in there if you decided that was beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like,
Be the other side, Cindy,
no,
right?
it'd be right here.
Keep going.
Yeah, it would be right along in front of this house. It looks like it would probably require the removal of a tree. And there is a utility pole there that may or may not be in the way. I mean, I'm just looking at Google Street View.
In my mind, I would prefer to, you know, it's particularly an issue during the summer months when there's a lot of guests at the Otesaga, I think. I think we're now entering the fall and winter season, and it gives us a little bit of time to think about this a little more. And
I think if we're gonna try stop signs, we should try it in the off-season and not in the on-season.
I agree.
right, but I wouldn't know if so we might not need the stop sign
We would still need the stop sign.
heading east. Why?
Yeah, because you gotta have traffic stop so people can use the crosswalk.
But the crosswalk is now on the other corner.
You still have to have people stop so that they can cross it. Most people on Lake Street, in my experience, are simply going straight.
Here's the other thing to consider is that the sidewalk, there is a between Chestnut and Pioneer, there's a sidewalk on only one side of Lake Street, the south side. So that's why I think the sidewalk stopped where it did, because it won't, unless you're gonna tie into to a crosswalk on the north side of Lake Street, there's no sidewalk on that side.
For a short distance, and there
No, for the
is,
entire distance, all the way up to Lake. So there's one sidewalk on Lake Street, which is on the south side of Lake, between Pioneer and Chestnut.
between Pioneer and Chestnut.
Yeah.
That is correct,
Right.
that is
By the
correct.
Crooked House side.
But on the north side, there is one from Chestnut Street, or on Lake Street, from the hotel down to Chestnut. So it's a matter of taking it X number of feet further.
Right, I get that part, but to understand why it stopped there, because they figured once we get you to a crosswalk onto Chestnut, we can save the extra payment.
I think you're right, I think we could still put stop signs in, but still strongly consider one crosswalk there.
Yeah, I mean, I think legally we'd be required to have crosses at both corners. We might not have to paint them, but people could still choose to.
And I just think it'd be easier for the tourists, because they don't walk down the west side of Chestnut. They immediately cross over and get on the east side of Chestnut to walk to our downtown.
Yeah, no, it's true. But I do think whether we want to approve this as a local law or whether we want to say we just want to try stop signs, I think it's worth.
Yeah, I think this is
Stop
different.
signs.
This is your stop sign, so we will do that. And then I think we really need to
Look up the sign.
evaluate the location of the crosswalk, though, and the sidewalk.
Yep.
So, and to your question, is there any solution to your problem you posed about trucks in this?
In my experience, in other intersections,
No, just this one.
no, that was
Oh,
the
I'm
beginning
sorry,
of the
I didn't
sentence. In my experience at other intersections, for instance, Glen and Chestnut, they figure out how to make it work.
They turn wide.
Yeah.
I mean, if we put in stop signs and it becomes a serious issue with trucks, we
Take
can
out the
revisit
stop
it.
sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I'm not anticipating that.
So is there a motion to approve local law number 5 of 2023 by adding a stop intersection on Lake Street east and west at Chestnut? Motion approved made by Cindy, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and our local one is again a tweaking of a earlier passed law to adjust the location of boat trailer parking on Fish Road. Is there a motion? Do you want to make that one, Sydney?
Sure, I make a motion to,
Relocate the boat trailer
relocate,
parking.
yeah, boat trailer parking
North on that side.
north on that side.
All right,
Thank
motion
you.
made, seconded by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on, we have one more special permit application for 51 Pioneer Street. Is anyone here to discuss that, or is,
I can give you the lowdown on this one. So 51 Pioneer Street is one half of the stone building, the other half is now owned by the Cooperstown Art Association. It has historically been a mixed occupancy building with a residence most recently on the first and second floor, and then a business on the lower level. The current owners want to drop the business aspect of this. Their plan includes transient rentals, but in order to even be considered for that, we need to recognize the fact that this building will no longer be mixed occupancy, it will be a residence. So this is a special permit for a single-family residence within the business district, because you can only have a single-family residence within the business district by special permit. So, since we're getting so good at this, I would like to declare the Village of Cooperstown Board of Trustees as the lead agency for the purposes of seeker.
motion made, seconded by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
I would then like to classify this action as a type 2 action under 617.5, C, number 18, concerning the reuse of an existing structure.
Motion made, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
Because this is a special permit, I would then like to forward this application to the Village of Cooperstown Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals, given the proposed transient rental use for their recommendation.
Motion made to forward it, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
And it does not seem to require referral to the county, given its location in the village.
May I make
And-
a comment? I don't know when we'll discuss it, but the comment I had is that we ran into a similar issue, did we not, on Main Street with the White House property that was half apartment on the business floor, and the other half was gonna be converted to apartment. The fellow who owns the White House,
Ed Landers.
Ed Landers, wanted to convert that storefront on Main Street.
Oh,
And we ended up, I think, saying, we said if we do that, that there were gonna be consequences that caused him to withdraw the application. But the concern, from our point of view, was that it was really interfering with the zoning scheme that we had for mixed use in the business district. So this would be a
Yeah.
precedent for that.
I would
I'm just
argue,
going
I would
back.
argue this is a slightly different situation because there is no business use at street level. You literally had to transcend into a subterranean business, which,
It's split level, half level. I mean, it's there. Everybody knew it was a store. It was kind of a neat little thing to get down.
I
it's
think-
kind of cute.
I think the previous owner might argue that everyone didn't know it was a store, which is one of the reasons why he closed it.
really is split levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But prior to that, the retail was
Was
on
upstairs. Yep,
the
that's
ground
true.
floor.
Yep, so we can have a public hearing
Sure.
and discuss it
Yeah, I just-
further.
It'll have to be a public hearing then.
Yeah.
In-
Can we do it in October?
Well, that's what I was wondering, because again, you're not giving them, quote, 30 days, but,
But we know the meeting schedule of those two. Well, my concern with the other was the county, because they don't have a set meeting schedule.
okay. Yeah, I would like to set the public hearing for 51 Pioneer, special use permit for October, our October, whatever that is, meeting. 23rd meeting. I make that motion, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, one more zoning thing.
And now we have our zoning law updates.
It's gonna be a long meeting.
I'm sorry, is there something you're waiting for on the agenda?
Well, no, I want to ask a question.
Oh, we forgot to ask for public.
You know, I
hearing.
didn't really have, I don't know if you were here, or maybe I didn't see you when we first opened the meeting, so I'm sorry. Is there a public comment you'd like to make?
Well, I just want to ask a question about something, about illegals, that how many are we housing in Cooperstown that are not work visa? They're not on work visa.
I'm sorry, did you understand?
Yes, he wants to know
Workers?
how many people who are,
Are in the
Couched as
village
a-
or on work visas?
No, not on work visa, that's full-time.
How many people are employed in the village? I'm sorry.
no. How many illegal immigrants do we have in the village who do not undocumented?
We wouldn't really have any statistics on that.
Well, how do we know who these people are? Like, do anybody on the board know if they're rapists, child molesters? I have 2 kids in school here. I think it's a valid question.
And I'm not sure who you would address this question to, but, you know, the village government is not notified per se.
So
It's
no one's
permissible.
notified if they bring in illegal immigrants?
No, because it's not illegal. They're in the
They're just
US.
undocumented.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're undocumented. Well, we can call them whatever we want to call them, but.
But it is important what we call people.
Well, no, what you call them and what I call them are 2 different things. It doesn't matter what I call them, there's no words for them. But, how do we find this out? Like, how do I know my kids are safe?
Talk to the police chief, maybe, Brian. I mean, I don't know that there have been any reported incidents from
Yeah.
any undocumented.
And I'm not saying there's gonna be a reported incident. I just want to know that
Yet it applies to every situation. You can say it, there's been no murders this week, and you can say, yeah, but there, to this point, there are no known
child molesters.
I would encourage you just to speak to the police department, our
I'll
chief is.
ask, yeah, it's the chief, I know the chief very well.
Yeah, speak to the chief about it, because he might have a better sense.
Are you concerned about child molesters and rapists among our documented population?
No, I don't care about that. They're legal immigrants. My kids have been going to school here for 12 years. You can turn it whatever way you want and ask a million questions like you've been doing for the last 2 hours. But I want to know for my kids. You obviously don't have kids in school here, and probably a lot of the people on the board don't have kids in school here. But I do, and I care about my kids. I love my kids very much, so I'm worried about my kids. It doesn't matter what your political views are, I'm worried about my kids. We don't know who these people are, and I'm concerned. So, you might not be concerned, but I am.
We are.
All right, so we're not going to get into this.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you
no.
for your question. Please discuss this with our police chief.
Yeah.
He might have a better concept on public safety. All right, moving on.
You have somebody on the way, Karen,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a couple of comments.
Your name and address.
Karen Johannesson,
Did we get the other one? I'm sorry.
37.
No, I didn't get his name or his address, but.
Yeah, 37 Lakeview
Good
Drive.
time.
Couple of things, and now I'm like this, because I have some issues with the traffic control up there on Main Street, which I didn't know this was gonna be going on tonight, so that, I don't wanna go off on that when there were other things I came to speak with. But I do have one thing to say about that traffic going up on Main Street. Where does it make sense that there have been signs posted going up Main on the right side, right before you would go into the parking area for the trolleys, where it says no through traffic, and now there's going to be all this traffic, and we're not talking about a normal road, that is not a normal site for a lot of traffic.
We can't really say no through traffic. No, we
Yes,
can't.
It says it does.
Yes, thank you.
Karen, when this Bassett Averill Road project first came to the board, maybe almost a year ago now,
Yeah.
after it ceased, the application was withdrawn, et cetera, because of litigation, we on the village board felt it really was important to look at Averill Road and to fund an Averill Road traffic study.
Yes.
Because it wasn't just even if that housing complex was built, there seemed to be residents there and people of Irish Hill who had some concerns about all the intersections. So we did hire Passero Associates, and they completed an Averill Road, basically traffic study. That has been disseminated to the village board, and it's also posted on the village website, villageofcooperstown.org. It's under news, and it'll also be under government, so under documents. I encourage you to go and read that, because I think it really does address some of the issues, and it pointed out issues that the village does need to look at, and we are planning to do so, whether it's guardrails in a certain area, maybe the establishment of advisory shoulder, which would allow pedestrians to sort of walk up that area. We are going to be budgeting for the extension of the pedestrian sidewalk pretty much from the red lot, from the parking area up the hill. It sort of goes up a ways and then dissolves, so we will be doing that. We're taking several of those actions that were in that traffic report. Look at it, and I think you'll find it really helpful, and it's helping the board address some of the issues.
I mean, there were rumors that another road might have been thought to put in over by the Farmers Museum to kind of alleviate what was going to be going on Main Street. But that isn't even the reason I came here tonight. I didn't know they were going to be here. It's been a long night. Two issues I have. One, the survey that I keep missing because I'm just busy. But anyway, I always miss these deadlines. So the New York Forward deadline.
Right, and I did speak to you,
Yeah.
and there was another individual. The deadline for open call was August 2nd. That was a 6-week open call, but
I'm still working in the
right,
survey,
right.
and I just-
But what I want you to know, actually LPC 4 meets this coming Wednesday. There'll be another one in November. Some of the projects are kind of in what would be called a small project fund. They're $80,000 worth of facade work. That is a separate grant fund, and this all goes to the Department of State. That New York decides what is picked, but we're very, very hopeful that they'll put $300,000 in for a kind of Main Street facade renovation fund. And if that's the case, when that is announced, when the projects are selected by the state in probably late December, January, then that becomes its own little fund, and even people who didn't apply by the August 2nd deadline will be able to apply. So you would be able to apply at that time.
Yeah.
So next
We
spring.
already did our work a year ago, so I wouldn't be eligible. But the point, one point I was going to make is, and again, you said it tonight, Ellen, that you notified people through social media, and surely you realize not all if you really want to have all the residents be able to access what's going on, you have to do more than rely on social media. Because there was a gentleman I sat down on the bench next to outside of Doubleday the other day, and I said, "What do you think of this projects? The ideas and blah blah blah." And he goes, "I don't have a computer." And
right, it's just one of the avenues. We've been told that we need to have more of a sort of Facebook presence, so we have that. We on the internet, but more important, our DPW department posted on every street that was going to be paved signage, no parking, etc. So in this case, we were taking numerous avenues to try and alert the public to the work going on in the village.
I would like to see more going on at Pioneer.
Karen, I usually only allow like 5 minutes, so is there something else you want to wrap up? Because we got still a whole agenda
All
here.
right, my biggie is, this is my pet peeve, not enough public restrooms. The whole thing used to be open till 9 in the evening in the summers, now they close at 6 in the summers. Now they close at 5. There's no place to send handicapped people. I can't send them down the lakefront park. People with a bunch of kids. It's not convenient. And I don't
Our
know-
double day bathrooms do.
No, double day. I put a little something on Facebook this summer, kind of to get some ideas about what merchants, what do people ask for. And when it came to the public restrooms, someone said, you don't want to send anyone to Doubleday Field.
Well, they're all new now.
Yeah, we have 19 new
Are they open?
Yes.
I was told that it was locked, and the only ones available were the old ones.
Well, we'll check on that, but we do have new restrooms in Fowler Pavilion. There were, we just came down to the wire on some checklist items, and so it has certainly been open since the bananas event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the bananas, I'm leaving now because I know you're busy. The bananas should have had a parade down Main Street. It would have been nice.
All right, thank you so
Not
much.
everyone got tickets. Thank you, good night.
Night. Not everyone got tickets, so.
Right, no, but I mean, the idea of a bananas parade down Main Street would have been over the.
They were out on the street. I don't know if you were out there. It was essentially their own little sidewalk parade. All right, so now we're at the zoning law updates. And we have a part 1 for that. Shall we complete that first, Cindy?
Yeah, I will make a motion to declare the Village Board of Trustees the lead agency for the purposes of seeker for the listed zoning law changes.
And can we just go ahead and declare it, with type 2 or?
No, it is a type 1 action.
It is a type 1
Yes.
because it's zoning.
Yes.
All right.
So we're lead agency, we're actually the only involved agency, so.
All right, wait, so there's the motion, second by Joe, all in favor? Aye. All
And then
right.
I'll declare it a type 1 action under 617.4, letter B, number 2, which is for changes to permitted uses in the zoning law.
Motion made, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
And I will set a public hearing for October.
Okay,
Is that a motion?
Yeah,
I'll second.
seconded by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
that one's done. And, well, unless you have any
And I
comments.
do, I thought, okay, so if we go back to our zoning minutes reports, you'll note that the planning board met solely to discuss this. I think, were you fine with the tweaking they wanted there, Cindy, and other aspects other than the?
Yeah, so they have one substantive comment, they found 4 typos, which is wonderful.
Yeah, so the typos are corrected.
They found those. Their one substantive comment concerns site plan review. So site plan review is required for any use in the village with a few exceptions, and listed among the exceptions were both single-family and 2-family dwellings. The planning board's recommendation is to remove the 2-family exception, so only single-family dwellings would be accepted.
And they're thinking?
Their thinking is that there is more involved in 2-family, more cars, 2 families are not the norm in our community, so.
Okay.
I thought it was a valid point.
Yeah, I think it's fine. So you want to set the public hearing with that change?
If the board, there's consensus on the board on that, I thought that was a good recommendation.
I think it was a great recommendation, yeah.
All right, so we will set the public hearing with that change.
Okay.
All right, perfect, thank you. Okay, we are finally at 8:40, heading into committee meetings, and I think we've all had a long long meeting tonight. So at this point, we've all read minutes in our packets. So unless there's something new that's come up you want to alert us to, or there's an action to be taken, I'd like to move through the committee reports by, adopting. So the next one is Police Committee. Is there anything new or any questions by anyone?
The only thing I have is that we've received an updated proposal from RCR for the village camera system. There were a couple of enhancements. Probably the most notable one is a special low-light camera for the dock area, and also basically the brains of the system is going to be capable of handling, I believe, up to 32 cameras. If the village ever moves in that direction, we would have to replace this, basically what is the server for the system. The price as proposed stands now at $14,162. And
Is there a consensus of the board, because now we've had a couple camera proposals, how do we want to, do we want all the proposals, how do you want to handle going forward to consider this? Because largely, I don't believe we have funds currently, do we, in our budget? I didn't look it up.
I think we have 10,000.
Yeah.
10,000, but
I think it was 10,000, and then there was an extra 5,000 that has normally been in the police, unless I'm totally wrong, for equipment. And so it was thought
But I think some of that equipment funds have been expended, haven't they?
I'm not 100% sure, because I do remember that there was that 5,000 within the equipment fund that said it was allocated towards cameras, and then there was an additional 10,000 that we had put into that budget. That's the original number that I remember, unless.
All right, so, again, it's late, I don't want to get into a whole discussion on it, but just how the mechanism for going forward.
That's my point. I think George has done a tremendous amount of work.
Good job.
Chief Cavallari has tried to round up a number of proposals. What I find we still don't have is a side-by-side, apples-to-apple comparison, which is no fault of ours. These come in at different times with different limitations and qualifications and specifications. So I personally don't feel we're in a position yet to make that informed decision. And I don't know who does that for us. I don't expect you to have to do it or the chief to have to do it, but we just don't seem to have enough apples to apples information.
One of the things we've encountered, we only received 3 proposals, and 2 of the proposals far exceed the $15,000 that we believe we may have available. One, I believe, was 23, the other one was $26,000.
15, okay, so I got the budget here, our adopted budget. Isn't this one, or is it, then I have the old one here. 20. I had a smaller amount there, 23, 24 budget, no. Fixed camera system, 5,295. Cargo storage unit, which I believe they did purchase, is 3,596. Then they just list vests and plates, new uniform equipment. So the grand total of all that is 15. So some of those funds have been expended. So we'll just have to ascertain how much is less. But the fixed camera system was in our budget at 5,295.
And it's multiples of that, and then they say we still need dedicated circuits and so forth that we have to supply.
So I think you're right. I think it's hard to compare these. So it's almost like you need a little spreadsheet or something that would facilitate it, and that would be great.
We can do that together.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Anything else on police committee?
And I'm happy to give it if it would be helpful to you.
Motion to accept the police committee report.
So moved.
By Sydney, second by George, all in favor.
Aye.
And then you also had fire committee, which was in here.
Oh, and Mitch says, just a reminder that as procurement officer, the quotes that are received have to be like in kind, like this and this and this need to be somewhat similar.
Okay. I can talk to Mitch. The document, yeah.
I don't know if you saw this.
I could talk to Mitch about a lot of things.
EMS, they noted what had come in. So is there any questions on the EMS? I'd like to point out that, we had a question last time, had medevac or whatever the helicopter service was, they reported Air Methods. We've received, the EMS has received 2 checks, $10,150 and $4,900 for a total of $15,050. And it appears there may be more in the future.
So those are remittances for?
Yes, for the EMS having transported patients from the helicopter to the hospital and vice versa.
Oh, that's good. So we're clawing back some of the past expenses?
We go back to the agreement took us back to.
6 months, I thought, or something like that. Yeah.
So so this is an interesting question, and I don't want to extend this longer than we have to, but does that money then go directly to the EMS?
Mm-hmm.
And are there stipulations on what they can use it for? Because at this point, it seems like they have a significant treasury.
Well, they mentioned on here, Cindy, that they're opening a fund for vehicle replacement, both for actual ambulances and then necessary equipment for them, like the stretchers and autoload system, which can cost between $40,000 and $60,000. So they are relieving village expenses, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, and one of the other little problems that we're attempting to address is county dispatch. The county EMS system is finding that they would like to be involved in that. And many of the calls now are suddenly being shifted to them, which is reducing the amount, because they can use any EMS service, they're paying them all the same.
And it's lucrative for them.
And it is, and the counties would like to benefit too from it. So I'm not sure how long this fountain will run.
Yeah.
Just so you know, it's a problem. Any money earned by the emergency squad goes into a separate, it's their funds. It's that whole adage. I mean, I think you ask any attorney who's drawn a will, I probably have drawn 40 or 50 wills where people have given fairly substantial sums to the emergency squad. I'm not sure, I think it happens because it's in a time of grief and they're being assisted and they feel benefited, and so they do it. But it's been made clear over the years, both by the controller and a series of case laws, that those are their funds, and happens in almost every municipality. About the only thing they receive all of they receive that. I'm sure if they used it inappropriately, there'd be an action by the controller's office.
Yeah.
If they started handing out money to people. But that's the dilemma, and it's a little boil over issue in every fire department and emergency squad. It just happens, and I don't know how to prevent it.
Yeah.
And then the other item in the public safety was the application by Otsego County Emergency Medical Service seeking to obtain a permanent certificate of need to operate their ambulance service, with the service primary operating territory being the entire county of Otsego municipal boundaries. And I didn't know if there was any comment that this board wanted on any of this. Yeah, I think it serves a very good need.
I feel like we should respond in some way though, whether that's affirmative or negative. I will say that what I observed listening to the pager is that the county takes a lot of calls, and I wonder how that bodes for the future of volunteer emergency services. Because if you're on your way to the station and the county ambulance has already responded, you're not gonna go next time. Or maybe you'll go next time, but you're not gonna go the third time. And so, you know, I do think perhaps there needs to be better coordination.
If you want, I'll reach out to our EMS and just see if they have any, I know they're sensitive to the helicopter or the new disappearing, but I will speak to them. I think in general, we are well served by our emergency squad, very much so. But obviously, they're having now sometimes to cover for these neighboring small municipalities that no longer have active services. And I think that the need certainly exists in the county, particularly for communities like Exeter, et cetera, to have a county service. So I think there is a benefit to it. If you want, I will reach out to Mike Simonson, just see if he has any sense of what he would like to see in that letter.
We also have a number of special events here in the village that require a standby ambulance, on-site stand, which is unique to a village such as ours. And that does change the equation somewhat, I believe.
All right, motion to accept.
I just have one thing on the public safety. This is maybe a strategic thing. We have very hopefully these monthly call lists. It would be great if, I don't know how they're recorded, if we have a software for it, but to be able to assess these, you know, have them show up on a map where they happened, where the calls were, because if we're planning for cameras or we're planning for anything, it would really be good to know how these things are distributed and if any patterns emerge geographically.
And it may show that they're widespread and
I'm just wondering, I mean, so and I'm making an assumption here based on my understanding of technology that there would be a way to export, you know, the last year or two of incidents. I'm just not sure that they would be easily pinpointed to a location without someone actively going in and putting those there, and that is a lot of work that we're asking one individual to do.
Yeah, it would be prospective.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to make work, it's just.
discuss it,
Okay.
see if there's a way. Great, motion to accept, we sort of did the police, did to the entire public safety, now the EMS and all.
Yeah.
All right?
Except.
And seconded by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
Let's move on to Doubleday Field Committee, and we do have an action item there. And Joe, I really do want to thank you for your comments on the Doubleday Field application. When they came in last month, I looked them over and I thought, well, you know, these are really good additions and corrections. I think you did a great job on that. And I know that they ended up pretty much taking the bulk of those. I did see that you thought they didn't take them in one particular area.
Yeah, and this is not picking, it's just that I find reading, if you get a call from someone about the application, go to paragraph 3, you know, letter A, and you can navigate around with all bullet form. You don't know where you are.
Unless you say
So it was just-
payment bullet form 3 or something, yeah.
But that's a small matter. No, there was a miscue on my part with Hannah, so that these didn't get it earlier, but.
And there's always an opportunity next year to fine tweak it. As you know, though, these are going right out, so we need to approve it tonight. The
And
one
I
that
have
you
comment.
have in the packet is the one that Marcia has commented on, and her kind of corrections are there in handwriting. So for instance, under scheduling, third bullet point, tournament applications for the following season are mailed by October 1. And then the fourth bullet point, individual applications are mailed, so instead of may be submitted. And then the only other addition was on page 3, under required paperwork, the fourth bullet point, last line, a hold harmless agreement, and then in parentheses, see page 6.
Mhm.
So if, with those sort of corrections,
I just had, go ahead. I was just gonna say, on the our mail business, that was ambiguous to me. Do we mean postmark? Do we mean, how do we?
she mails them by. And then they are returned after that, and they are date stamped, et cetera, when they are returned.
No, I thought tournament applications for, I thought these were supposed to be received by.
No, it's our mailed.
We're mailing them out by October 1.
Correct. That's why we need to approve it tonight, so they can get out.
Okay, yep.
I wondered if one field rule we might want to add, where we say live streaming games is permissible with the permission of the teams that play, whether we might want to add a bullet point under that and say the use of drones is not permitted without additional permitting.
Okay, let's add that line. Did you get that, Jenna? It's the use of drones is not allowed without additional permitting. All right, with that, is there a motion to approve the Doubleday field game application for 2024? By George, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
And Hannah did a great job on that. I know it has come up in the past that, is there an easier way to do this, to accept the money, and, instead of sort of having them mail things, but their experience in the past is someone says, I emailed you something and it's not complete, the components are missing. But there is probably a good way to sort of fine tune it. And one procedure that could potentially help would be to work with we have Municipay, which is the one through which people can pay water and sewer, they can pay their taxes, et cetera, to also set it up so we could take payments for Doubleday. And so it's too late this year, but we could certainly look at that and step by step make it a little more automated. All right, motion to accept Doubleday committee report by George, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
Streets committee.
You can ask questions about anything on here. I just want to note all the paving work that has happened of
It's
late.
just incredible.
So it's just really amazing, and special thanks to our streets crew and the others who have contracted to do that. It's been long days, sometimes with really frustrated and rude people, so kudos for all the extra effort they put into that.
And it's a very precise undertaking.
It is.
Yeah, it's a very visual improvement in the village, a lot of positive feedback. Motion to accept streets committee report by Sydney, second by George, all in favor?
Aye.
Buildings committee, we have the EDS contract.
Yeah, so the reason that this is an action item, we have expended all the money that we needed to expend on this building to get $120,000 back. But in order to do that, this will make you laugh even more, we have to pay a fee. We have to pay a commitment fee of 1% of the grant amount, and as well as out-of-pocket expenses for to the Department of State, so that comes to $1,388.85 that we have to submit with our final application for this incentive package. So that's why it's on the agenda. I make a motion that we do that.
And it'll come from buildings.
It'll come from buildings, and then it will clearly be part of
I'll second that.
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye. Way to go.
I hope we never, ever, ever do a 2080 grant again.
No,
I will just say
I
that,
would
the
agree.
amount of effort.
This was a real learning experience, and there you have it.
All right, motion to accept buildings committee. There's no update yet on the elevators there.
The gentleman who does our repairs actually took the belt in search of a belt himself, because his supplier has been unable to provide the belt, but I have no update beyond that.
Yeah.
Maybe we should ask her to buy 2 belts,
Have one in reserve.
like suspenders, yeah.
I will tell you, not until you're on a walker do you know how impractical this is? I literally had to carry my walker down 2 stairs to get in. And you take your life in your hands going out on that brick walk. And I said, Mitch, what happened to the concrete? And he said, I'm on it now. So, thank you, Mitch. It's precarious. It can catch like the wheel on a walker and pitch you right over. It's really awful. So you don't, I can see, I was thinking, this is why Cindy has her class. All use wheelchairs and all, and try and get around the village, because when you do,
It's
you
really hard.
understand completely.
It does make me wonder whether we should consider, I mean, we talked about, doing something in the art association where we have those 2 steps down, but whether we should consider some sort of rampage here.
I don't know how.
It would be very difficult, but
switchback of some sort.
it's worth talking about.
Yeah, and if the elevator functions, then it's,
I know that
you
it's.
know, I'd be on the elevator.
I don't know what happened to implied warranty of merchantability here. I mean, this is kind of crazy.
It
Yeah,
is.
but I think the problem is it's a residential elevator stuck in a.
But there's still, someone's gotta be implying that it's suitable for the use to which we're,
Yeah.
they know it's being
Let's go for
put. I mean, this is,
Well, and I think that the issue is it is warranted, it's simply that they cannot secure the part that they need.
it's like
to
the
fix it.
Seinfeld thing about you take reservations, but you don't keep them. You don't, a
Yeah.
reservation means you keep them.
Yeah.
It's the same, I mean, it
Yep.
just doesn't make sense to me.
All right, we're gonna be zipping through finance now. Joe?
So we've got your LoSAP statement, we completed the bank reconciliations, accepted the checking at our Thursday meeting.
I didn't know.
The sales tax report is in, and I think we were $11,000 year over year ahead from last year, or month over month rather, for July. Yeah, just about $11,000, so that's good news. The portfolio report we just got this evening, and as you can see, our total for the season on the last page, gross total to date is $418,000, approximately $500, exclusive of the app income, which is another 35 or so.
Yeah, I did not look it up for this evening. and
So, but
We're probably getting pretty close to where we need to be.
where we budgeted. We have some capital projects to pay applications to address. So for the first on your, let me see, I've got too many pages here. Let me just make sure I'm going to have them in order. So we have a Doubleday, if you go to the front page of your packet, we have a Doubleday Field Delaware Engineering invoice number 22-2515-6 in the amount of $1,608, which I move the payment of.
Motion made by Joe, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
We have a Hoffman Lane Pioneer Alley Delta Engineering invoice number 7 in the amount
See,
of.
that's the old stuff. You need to look at our new packet, because what was sent on the agenda is incorrect.
Okay, so then
You
there's,
need to look at the second agenda that I sent tonight,
Oh,
because the corrected capital projects did not get listed on the agenda.
okay, so,
That's why they're on the agenda.
okay, so that's the 4.
The 1 through
Three,
3, and
and
then
the surplus vehicles.
Yeah.
All right, I
Sorry.
apologize, everybody. So for Doubleday Field Delaware Engineering invoice number 7 in the amount of $1,092.25, I move the approval of this payment.
Second.
Second by Cindy, all in favor?
For the Doubleday Field Third Base Facility Project closeout, the final payment invoice number 18 in the amount of $5,000, I move its approval of this payment.
Joe, second by Sydney, all in favor?
All right. For the Doubleday Field, the grandstand invoice number 219319 in the amount of $26,045. I move the approval of that payment.
Made by Joe, second by Sydney, all in favor?
All right. Okay, so I think, all right, so they were identical. And now we need to approve the declaration of our surplus vehicles for auction, and they are listed. We have a list of them.
Yeah, you could just read off of mine if you'd like.
I will, thank you.
He's waving on.
These are the vehicles to approve for being sold as surplus at auction. A 2013 Ford F-550 in the amount of $22,200.
Why don't we do all of them
Okay,
except all
a
the surplus?
2015 Ford F-250 in the amount of $14,000. A 2020 Ram 2500 in the amount of $41,600. A 2020 Ram 1500 in the amount of $26,600, and a 2016 Smith Spreader in the amount of $1,875 for a total sales of $106,275.
Great, I think we've been well served by Auctions International, so.
Yeah.
Joe made approving the surplus vehicle sales, seconded by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye. Let's see, now we have.
I think we just.
We have our, what did I just do with that? So you have your overtime analysis and leave analysis, and the change transaction inquiry in the treasurer's office. I move the approval of the abstracts and transfers identified in your packet.
By Joe, second by George, all in favor?
Okay.
And there was another item we have to.
We didn't do the,
There's 2 training requests in there, but
Yes.
the agenda's a little confusing, that's not that.
Right, no problem. Yes, we have training requests from Quentin Hassick and Jared Hoagling. The details are in your packet, and I move the approval of those training opportunities.
my motion made by Joe, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
And I think that's it. Am I wrong?
No, I think that's.
Yeah, it was the 2 for Quentin and the 1 for Jared, right?
Yep.
We got all those, yeah. That may be it.
Yeah, I believe that. Just don't forget to mention the state aid payment advisory from New York State Comptroller's Office.
Yeah.
It came in late this afternoon.
Oh, right,
It's the AIM funding.
yeah, the AIM funding. Yeah. That wasn't on the addendum, was it?
No, it was just, it was separate underneath the addendum.
Okay.
It was with the sales tax and park rural information.
All right,
You read it?
yeah, did you want to hand it to Joe?
Oh, you wanna do it?
So we accept this payment, or?
It's just kind of an FYI, Deb said
It's
there's
an
no approval,
FYI,
it's
it's
just letting
the-
you know what we got in AIM funding.
Yeah.
We have a state aid payment in the amount of $13,567 to the village from the state controller. It's for the annual September aid and incentives to municipalities payment. And this, for accounting purposes, will be entered in our budget coding at A301 or A3001, state aid revenue sharing. So that's revenue to our.
Yeah, it's a budget line as you've seen in our budget. Thank you, Joe.
There is one other thing on the finance agenda to close out the Grove Street Culvert Capital Project bank account and deposit the remaining $17.34 in the A checking account.
We've gotten all our grant funds on that.
I'm sorry.
On Grove Street, did we get all our grant reimbursements on that?
I would have to confirm with Mitch whether they can come in or not.
Okay. Because they would probably come into that account. It's what we usually do, and then if we pretty much paid, because we were a little bit of borrowing from Paul to pay Peter there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
It would be good to get make sure that that fund stays intact.
Yep.
Until, so perhaps we could make the motion to close the Grove Street culvert capital fund after we've ascertained that all the grant proceeds are in, or you think he's gonna be able to insert it
He
tonight?
said that they've come in, so I'm just
In
confirming.
total?
I'm just confirming where they went. It says it would be fine to close it out.
Okay, because there are no more funds coming in,
Correct.
okay.
So I would second that motion to close out the.
All right, and seconded by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
And motion to accept finance report by Sydney, second by George, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Joe. Community and environment,
We did not meet this month.
I was gonna say, we didn't meet this month, but
No.
yeah, I didn't see any minutes.
No.
Meeting. Under Water and Sewer Board, we have the approval of the flow management.
Plan, yeah.
I'm sorry?
That's right, we have to approve that.
Which was emailed to everyone. So hopefully everyone took the time to read that delightfully long, but it was interesting, document on our flow management. Is there a motion to approve the flow management plan?
It's to approve your execution of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I so move.
by Joe, second by George, all in favor?
Aye.
And by the way, that was with the recommendation of the Water and Sewer Board.
Yeah. And also at the recommendation of the Water Sewer Board was a request for reduction of the water sewer bill for Tim McDonough, 1 Prospect Place. Basically, all the water did go through the meter, but I would move that we reduce the sewer portion of his bill to the average usage.
And that's seconded by me.
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye. That was also
I
based
don't
on.
know, I don't know where the water went. Why would it not have gone through the sewer? I mean, everything.
It went under the sink into the house.
Oh, so that's different from the email that we got.
Yes, the email is confusing because it was that where there was a
He
leak.
didn't note that, but if you read the sewer
Yes.
board and water and sewer reports,
Alright,
it had been ascertained when they spoke to a plumber that there was a major leak
Okay.
under a sink.
well then, that's fine. I was relying on the email which says no leak.
Right, and that, it's understandable, this was really, the facts were
Okay.
out of a Sherlock Holmes story. Couldn't figure them out.
All right. Motion to accept the water and sewer board report by Joe, second by George, all in favor?
Aye.
And then new watershed supervisory minutes from September 7th. And if there are any questions on anything on there? If not, we'll accept those. We just kind of read them over.
I was just gonna say, can I just do a quick parks? Can we just skip parks?
I did, I skipped parks, I was moving so fast, I'm
It's okay,
sorry. It's right there on the bottom.
There's almost nothing. We
Okay.
did not meet this month, however, we wanted to set a date for the unveiling of the signage at Council Rock.
And I thought we did, it was
I think
Sunday.
yep, tentatively, just officially, October 15th, that's a Sunday at 1:30 PM is
Yeah.
the date and time, if that works for all.
1:30, yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect, and
Perfect.
so we just need to figure out a press release for that.
Great. And jumping back up, I did kind of zip through this, Doubleday Field, we don't need to say anything, we just did our final payouts on all that, so completed, that is great. I don't know if there's anything to update on Hoffman or Pioneer Alley.
Nope, we wait now for
We
what
wait
comes
now, they've been
next.
submitted, so, New York Forward, our next LPC4 meeting will be this Wednesday in this room, 4:30 to 6:30. And if anyone can stay after for a few minutes to help reconfigure some of the tables. I unfortunately can't lift very much, but I can be a
Nice excuse.
supervisor. I know.
Sydney knows how this goes.
I do know how this
You
goes.
may be
I know, you did it once before.
Yeah,
And
I
our
meant to
next-
bow out this time, I'm sorry.
You're a trooper. Our next welcome home will again be the first Tuesday of the month, October 3rd. It's getting a little cool out there, so it may just be in the upstairs corridor, 5:30 to 7, and I hope to see you there. We've been getting some nice people coming in. I did want to give you a brief update on the franchise agreement. I haven't forgotten that. You know, we talked before when this came in, it had expired. That's true in June. I reached out to NICOM and had a long discussion with Rebecca Recito, who's in charge of this. And she noted that if it expires, the terms continue until you set up a new contract. At the time, we were wondering about the implementation of buried cable on Pioneer and Hoffman. One thing I did find, and this was something that's a new law just in the past couple of years, so it might not have been familiar to everyone, but there was the idea of what could we ask them for? You know, one place did a public TV channel for the schools or that sort of thing. There's now a law that if they give you that, they then take those funds. If it costs them $20,000 to do it, they take it out of your gross receipts. And if you recall, Spectrum is our largest contributor to our gross receipts line. They contribute 60% of our budget. We get about $36,686 from them last year. So that's, you know, something we didn't really see as we wanted to monkey with per se. So I did connect with them and ask them about burying lines. But, you know, again, if it was going to be $30,000 to do this, we probably weren't interested. They said the poles are not theirs, they're NYSEG. They really have to begin with NYSEG. And they said, let us give you the connection to NYSEG. And I said, well, we've already made that connection.
Yes.
We've already filled out the paperwork and begun the process to see if we could get poles down on Hoffman Lane and Pioneer Alley and potentially Berry. And they said, that is perfect, because if you did that, and if NYSEG undergrounds the electric wires, then we will do it at absolutely no cost to you. So we're in good shape there. So I thought, well, what can I ask?
That's incredible.
What can I ask them for then? And we're at 4%. The maximum allowed under the law is 5%. So I said, well, what we may consider increasing the gross receipts percentage to at least 4.5 or something. And I said, what would be involved? And they said, well, again, it would be a 15-year contract. We would rewrite the new contract. It would go to the PSC for approval. And if approved, it would come back to us for a public hearing. So with your permission, I think we've gotten our answer for undergrounding the wires.
Yep.
And we've had our questions answered, and we'll go for.
I just one quick question. I was confused on what you said. There's a cap on of 5%, and we're at 3%.
We're at 4%.
We're at 4%. Is there any reason to
The only thing would be if then PSC would say, no, not 5. So it would just delay it several more months.
Okay, so there's a number that they will accept.
I would think that they might tolerate more 4.5, but I'd like a motion of the board for me to do that. 4.5.
4.5.
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, I'll follow up on that.
We
And
just
I
approved
think
the watershed committee, we never finished that, approving the watershed committee.
Watershed Supervisory Committee, there was no action, we just.
No, I didn't know if you wanted to approve the reports, you had started to. do
Yeah, we
motion.
approved the report
I
by
will move the
Joe,
approval.
second by Sydney, all in favor.
Aye. Thank you.
And then I already mentioned breakfast with the board, October 23rd, 8 to 9. We'll try and get it up on social media. Our numbers dwindled a bit this morning, but we had some good people
Yeah, I was
here.
out of town.
I just got back this afternoon.
No.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to make any of them because I teach at 9 o'clock in Oneonta.
I know.
I'm
It's tough.
in class by 8, basically.
Yeah.
I won't be at, as much as I would love to join us for
Many
so
public
many
hearings.
public hearings, I'm getting married that week, and,
And your point is?
Really?
unfortunately not going to be able to make it the next meeting. So,
All the best
Yeah.
to you.
so that's just wanted to let you know.
The only thing I would like to say, and I think I may have alluded to this, that hopefully we'll get recommendations back from our planning board on April Road, and we would be looking at that, and in October, we would set a public hearing for a meeting in November. But it's really important that we, again, I think we did a great job with part 1 tonight, to kind of take our time and consider all the components so that there's potential for future litigation, and just so that it can't be said we were anyway cavalier on it. So when you look at your November calendar, look not only at that Monday, but the Tuesday and Wednesday, because we may meet 3 nights in a row to ensure a complete and thorough evaluation of that application.
That's right after Thanksgiving.
That's the week after.
Yeah, so you'll be well fed on turkey. You can bring your turkey sandwiches and you'll meet. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh, my back.
Okay.
Yeah, sitting for such a long time.